Dare I say the wagon is almost done. However, there has been a looming dread hanging just above my noggin for the past 2 years. Or rather, it would be if it was still in the car. Instead, there is a hole. And it might just be my incompetence, but the sunroof always seems to be one of the most miserable parts of the build. You may have noticed it's getting its own video. It's all my favorite parts rolled into one, that being weather stripping, panel gap adjustment, and a bunch of little unobtainium parts that I can't find anywhere. And I even get to do some wet sanding. How lovely. Mercifully, however, on this here 1986 Volvo 740 turbo diesel wagon, the sunroof has its own little chassis what bolts into the roof instead of it being welded into the unibody like on a Mark II. And I have even found some parts that might actually work, so let's get into that. And since I have this convenience, I'm going to get it working on the bench before I put it in the car, for reasons that should make sense. Now this unit actually very nearly worked, but it would always get bound up and make some very ugly noises. But as far as I can tell, nothing is actually critically broken. Of course, the shuttle and all that is gone. And of course, we have a manual sunroof. I'll be putting in a power. Off to a great start. That was an unkind noise. I have a power unit to put in if I can manage, but we'll see. So it's going that way, pretty nice. Yeah, I don't know. It seems to work pretty all right when I do that. Although I can't say for sure it wasn't just getting held up on the weather stripping in the car. So I'm just going to spray some juice at it and see if it gets any better. That's probably a decent alternative to doing research and actually knowing what I'm doing. Oh, now it doesn't work, just smoother. Nice. It was getting bound up on these little dangle arms what support the flap on the shuttle. I think I'll be getting rid of that, to be detailed later. But I'm going to be pretty mad if it was just dry for all these years. Well, not mad, just disappointed. But that means this video might be less entertaining. We'll see. I'm sure it'll still be painful. Oh, never mind. Even though it is kind of working okay, this selector gate is still broken. But that makes sense. This is the side that was always hanging up when it was in the car. But it also means I have to take it apart more now. Luckily, however, over the past 2 years, the only parts car I have found in a salvage yard happened to be a 740 wagon with a sunroof. Although it was an 89 model, it had good selector gates. Well, at least 1.5 good ones. We'll get to it. But between 86 and 89, they appear to have at least slightly redesigned these. It was also the panel from that car that I painted. So I'm just going to try putting it back together with this one. Although I should probably lube it first. Those cables are ever so slightly crusty. And these shuttles, what are affixed to the cables, just slide out the aft end like so, if that was in frame. Oh, and I guess I hadn't really planned this far ahead. I don't know what I'm going to lube them with, but you can see how each of them is wound in that spiral pattern, what that gear engages with. And they have a little felt material that is supposed to hold the grease. As you can see, that is very dry. So I guess I'll just give those a clean and then a spritz with some greaseless lube. Right after I remember where the frame is. Hello. Ah! I was about to say how convenient it was that that end is exposed to just hose some brake clean down into it. Not sure if you ever had brake clean run down into your armpit. Doesn't feel nice. But what's coming out of it isn't clear, so it must have done something good. Ow. I was so confident that I didn't need to label them because they're kind of foolproofed. But even foolproof mechanisms often underestimate the power of my foolishness. Which side is up? Skid marks. Why? So to get it working again, I'm just going to reassemble all of the bits from the later sunroof I have. And I expect this to be by far the most miserable part of this video, because while I did take pictures when I took it apart, they really aren't that helpful, and I don't know how it goes together. So let's learn. First, I think, maybe, is the scupper at the back, what serves as the rear guide on the two rails. And as detailed before, here is the peg, what is moved by the cable. And of course the selector gates, which do all the thinking and the work and whatnot. Now I could see pretty immediately why they redesigned this, because on the other sunroof it broke right about there, because the pin that drags it forward and aftways connects to this back piece, whereas on here it ties in to the front, which is where the bulk of the sunroof is. So instead of putting all the force through the little section right there, the load is carried by the entire piece, which I imagine makes it beefier. Speaking of beefier, one of them's broken. I did that. However, I have determined that that piece was only for the crossbar between them, which drags on a couple springs to open this flap when the sunroof is slid all the way forward. But I think I'm going to delete that, because not only will it be difficult to match up the pattern on the headliner, that'll just take some of the weight and complexity out of it. Also, I have not been able to find this piece anywhere, and I have tried, I do promise. But as far as I can tell, that pin goes into these little dingle arms, what capture that carriage that slides back and forth inside the selector gate. And I don't know why it's called a selector gate. Some engineer thought of that. I'm sure it's appropriate. Maybe. I'm just going to pretend I'm confident I know it's right and keep putting it together. But 2 out of 4 of the little circlips isn't a very good ratio, to be honest. And that's not even counting how many I'll lose when I realize this is entirely wrong and I have to take it apart again. But we'll get to that. And I'm not sure if they are 1/16th, but the 1/16th E-clip from the Harbor Freight assortment kit has worked. And to see if that'll actually do anything, I guess I'll put it in the chassis and plop a panel onto it. And I do know that the rails themselves are slightly different. I'm just hoping that's not going to be an issue. Hey, future me, did I put a foreshadowing caption there? Those holes line up. I knew it was going to work the whole time. And until I know it works, I'm going to put the old crusty panel on instead of the nice shiny one I just painted. But I guess I'll have to take it off of this one before I put it on the other one. Those were very loose. I can't imagine that was helping. Logic would dictate these are supposed to be attached to the rails. That's cool. Oh. Cool, it doesn't work at all. So the reason it wasn't going back was literally the only part I had any experience with. This little doohickey what mounts the handle and has the gear in it. It has its own stops inside it, although it just looks like a bearing and a gear. Slightly complicated by the fact that this one goes like that too, so it has 2 stops and the little pin that you have to press with the button. So now it should do the thing. You may also know that the panel is now shiny. This is the one I paint matched to the car. Beautiful. I did that because the stamping on the bottom of the panel is slightly different to accommodate this spring that just the newer one has. That wasn't the issue. And of course, this wouldn't be an issue if you have a power sunroof, but I didn't want to hook up the motor straight to it and risk destroying everything in case it was wrong. I also don't know that the motor works yet, so let's find that out next. Actually, no, next is the wind deflector. I want to make sure that can work. Also, I didn't get any of that fiddling on camera because said camera overheated because it's 1,000,000 degrees today, and I have decided to sacrifice audio quality for, I guess I could call it comfort. I don't know. If I'm so sweaty my glasses are sliding off my face, I couldn't really make a good video now, could I? Oh, my point is that's why you hear the AC in the background. Wait, that's wrong. That has to happen secondly. And one of the springs was actually broken on the car I got this out of. So I've had to remanufacture them out of other springs. I don't know where they're from. And then this can go on because of angles and geometry and such, you know? If you were paying attention, you saw that that didn't even start to work at all, which is cool. But I think it's just because these arm doohickeys are bowed outly and they weren't contacting the plastic guide piece that squishes them down. I hope. Much more good. Well, that wasn't. It's fine. Well, it works nice and smooth with me cranking on it, so let's see if that motor works. Here is the nugget in question, also out of that 88-740. Also, I have the diagram from the Volvo Green Book. This shows that the circus is quite simple. It's just a feed from fuse 10, apparently, into the switch, which is a double pole, double throw that reverses the polarity to make the sunroof go forward and aftwards. And all of the stops, what tell the motor when the sunroof is forward and aftways and up and down, are mechanically built into here, which is pretty nifty. So if it works, I should be able to run it all the way backwards to the stop, then all the way forward to the stop where it's level, and then hit it again to make it go up, then back down, and then hit it again to bring it backwards. So here I have some electrons from my portable electron cube. And I have just done that up temporarily with some wire nuts. Well, oh, you know, if I turn the jump pack on, I bet we'll at least be closer. Hey, look at that. Why can't it just work? That would be easier. So there's this case ground on the motor, but according to the diagram, that is not neat. Oh. Aren't we learning so much today? So that's closed. That's upwards. That's downwards. That's backwards. All right, I guess I'll try putting it in. And of course I have that parked in the closed position. Oh, that was pretty stupid. Oh, wait a minute. And I am a fair bit more nervous about this than when I first tried to start the wagon. Oh. You beautiful piece of machinery. My Harbor Freight jump pack is now complaining that this motor is too much of a load for it. And you can see it slowing down. Well, save for the cooked jump pack, that works. Now, we really don't want to do all the work of putting it back in the car just to see if it works. I am pretty convinced. But I still do have to take it apart again to make it all pretty. Then it can go back in the car. So let's do that quickly. Ah, that's going to take the paint off. Oh well. And with those drying, we can finally work on the panel. Of course, it's already been introduced because of some unforeseen incompetencies, but here's the wagon's original panel. You can see this ever so innocent looking insulation here. But nay, the rubber stuff this is on top of is literal asphalt. It didn't come off with heat. It didn't come off with cold. What I ended up doing is just filling the entire sunroof with diesel and letting it sit overnight. And that made it a little bit easier, but it was still miserable. And obviously it wasn't looking too handsome after that. So it has been painted black. On this side, it's the same single-stage urethane that I painted the rest of the car, although it is yet to be cut and buffed, my favorite. Anyway, I do want to put some more sound deadening on there. So here's some more kill mat like I used on the rest of the car. Now, I was able to get these pre-cut by cutting them to shape before I filmed this part. I'm sure this pattern is wrong to someone. Or everyone, I don't know, I didn't Google it. And I figured I'd do that before I cut and buffed it, because that'll keep the vibrations down from the orbital. And with that, I am finally done wet sanding and polishing the wagon. So I can finish putting this together by putting on this lovely new sunroof lid seal from VP Auto Parts. They make a bunch of hard-to-get stuff for old Volvos, and this is about the only new piece you can get for this sunroof. Realizing I don't know where the seam goes, and looking at the old one, I see Volvo put the seam right about here. I guess I'll do the same. I'm sure they had a good reason. And then these sticks would serve, I'm sure, as a very important function. Oh, that's why Volvo put the seam there. I knew that the whole time. And with that, there is only one main character left before it is ready for reassembly. That, of course, being the shuttle panel. And here we can see not only some delicious looking mold, but also this panel, what's meant to flip up when the sunroof slides forward, like so, to let air and bugs and such in. That's not gonna exist anymore. As I mentioned, one of the pins on the selector gate, what makes that happen, is now missing because I broke it, which is terrible because they are absolute unobtainium anymore, but mostly unfortunate because I didn't get it on video. Here's one I already cleaned up a little bit. Well, I don't know why I didn't just finish cleaning it up before I put it on camera. No matter, suppose I'll do that now. Ah! What? Oh, for these two cans are entirely too similar for them to expect me to notice the difference. That's what I wanted. That's good enough. It only has to be clean enough for glue to stick to it. Now, just to get rid of the flap hole, my solution is admittedly a little archaic. It's just some heavy poster board that I have painted to make it waterproof-ish, probably. Since all that needs to do is support the fabric, it doesn't need to be much. Ooh, it already looks terrible. Nice. And I will be using 3M Super 90. There's also Super 77. You want the stuff that comes out all stringy and gross looking. The other stuff will eventually let go. This is what I have been using for all my headliners, and none of them have fallen down yet. except for the one on which I learned not to use Super 77. And this stuff is a contact adhesive, so you have to let it flash off and get tacky before you slam the two halves together. Now for the fabric itself, of course it would have been beige, but I don't want to do all this work just so it can be beige. So I have chosen something a little more whimsical. This is just some standard anti-pilling fleece, but of course since it has a pattern, I have now added an extra step. But if we look at this continuity error up here, I can take some measurements based on where that hole was and reference it to the clip what secures the shuttle to the sunroof. I can eyeball that it needs to be somewhere. And I don't really expect it to be perfect because I don't know exactly how it's going to sit when it's installed, but I think I can get it pretty close. And another thing getting rid of the flap avoids is having to make the fabric look nice going around it. So if you were here to see that, I don't care. And with a pattern, you got to be careful when you do this part because it will tug on the other side slightly, and that could distort the pattern. Might not be absolutely perfectly straight, but who is, to be honest? And I just need to come back around with an as of yet undetermined type of glue to affix that even more securely. That way we know it's going to rip instead of peeling off when it gets snagged on something. So I guess it's time to put it all together. This has been given a light clean, and the shuttle actually has to go in first, and I gave it some E6000 around aforementioned edges. As far as I can tell, this can go in with everything in place. I'd like not to be proven wrong, he says, being proven wrong. Oh, maybe not. I guess I can just hang out like that for the time being. An error. This needs to go not in front. And a brief look at how the mechanism actually works before it's all put back together. So far it's all made sense in my brain. I'm sure that'll translate to words. So this guy and this pin is what is driven by the cables. It is now where it would be if the sunroof was down and back. As the cables drag forward, it will get to here. Somewhere. There it is. And this little doohickey will pop up into a notch here and lock the sunroof forward and backwards. Then if the cable is to continue moving forward, it'll start actuating that selector gate to move it upwards. And back here there is a little guide that pops up out of the rail. Oh, it doesn't really work without the sunroof being hinged at the front. No matter, I demonstrated it going up. And this guide back here, what is drawn down by the selector gate as the cables move back, that will press into that arm with the detent on it to unlock the panel to be able to slide backwards. That's both what controls the up and downs motion as well as preventing it from sliding backwards before it is retracted down. And here you will see the broken piece, what I broke off. Very stupid. But now it is what it is, and I have done a deletion. And I think I'm only filming this little bit to procrastinate more putting it back in the car. This is going to suck a lot, but I think I'm going to do it just like this to keep it as light as possible. Also, the panel is meant to go in and out with this already in the car. So let's get to struggling. I can cut that out. No, that's what I wanted, don't worry. Ah. Sorry there, tube. Bye-bye. I don't even want to put the banana suit back on for that gag. That took a long time and a lot of swear words, but it's in there. Go check out my Patreon if you want to see all the swear words. One thing I was hoping to gloss over is these stupid little shoulder screws that it's mounted with. They're just self-tapped into the structure of the roof, which is quite stupid. A few of them are now stripped out. Well, they were stripped out, but now it's just a bigger self-tapping screw. But I will be so bold as to say it's not going anywhere. Anyways, let's put the panel in. That's probably a normal sound for it to make. And of course all those are adjustable, so I have guessed by putting it somewhere in the middle of the flat bit in the selector gate. Then I'll just pop the manual crank back in to hopefully have a little more control. And after a ridiculous amount of fiddling, it's kind of almost aligned, but I think good enough for now. But the shuttle still isn't attached, so if I were to open it all the way, it's going to drag that back, and I don't know if I'd be able to get it back, so I'm going to get it 100% done and working, and that will be the last thing I do. And there is a reason. We'll get to it. And now I have this parked at what I think should probably be closed, I hope. I did that again. That's stupid. And with a jump pack that's hopefully less dead this time. And I haven't wired it into the car yet, because I think I still might decide to leave it manual depending on how this goes. Minor snag with the wind deflector. I do believe it's because that new seal is slightly deeper than the old one, because there is no adjustment on the wind deflector at all, except maybe just bending it, which might work. As you may have noticed, I already ruined the paint. So that works half decently, but my jump pack has actually given up now. So I'm gonna get the rest of the electrics sorted before I move on to putting the shuttle together and maybe adjusting it. So here I have just long-ended the wires on the original connector. This butyl sound deadening also works fairly well for just taping wires to the structure, and it's just run down here along the A-pillar. And of course this car did not have a power sunroof, but here we can see it used fuse number 10, a 30 amp fuse. And if we go here to the heated rear window, it uses fuse number 10, a 30 amp fuse. And conveniently, the two switches are right next to each other in the dash, so all I need to do is borrow some volts from that switch there and then figure out a ground. And here we can see the connector for the rear defogger switch. It carries all the current, there is no relay or anything. Because of that, we'll see these fairly heavy gauge in and out wires. I just need to tap into that big blue and yellow and then put my switch connector here somewhere. And those new wires fit quite nicely back with this big trunk behind the crash bar. And very conveniently, there are a bunch of unused ground terminals for spade connectors underneath the relay panel. So that is where the ground lives now. So even in this stupid reality, this should work. I should connect the battery. Feel like I'm being stupid. Please? Please? What did I did? I've connected the ground to positive. They're very close to each other. Well, at least I know that's a positive now for the future. Okay, now that's connected to a ground. I bet it works better. Should I give up? I don't know where I was measuring for that ground earlier, but apparently I lost it. Okay, that I know is one. Now it works. Tremendous. So before I go fiddling with the shuttle, I will now do my best to get it aligned. So it works pretty good. Haven't attached the shuttle yet. We'll see how that goes. But right now, it's pretty smooth, and also a perfect time to thank today's sponsor, Giving Up. Giving Up is a wonderful tool when it comes to putting your dreams into perspective. I like to use it in circumstances such as now, when I'm forced to accept that this hardware is just 40 years old and kinda worn out. Also accepting that no one will actually sponsor me, so here's a fake one. But in IRL, there is just too much slop in these selector gates to make it actually perfect. Of course, it's not actually going to do anything in this position anymore, so it doesn't really matter. But if I park it back from that position, it's going to sit a little proud of the roof. But if I park it from the open position, it's going to sit a little lower. But these parts are very much unobtainium, so I'm going to call that good enough. It works, and a hell of a lot better than it did before. So I'll take it. And of course the shuttle is supported on its own tracks. The only thing that actually affixes it to the slidey bits are these two little clips, which were what I would say unnecessarily annoying and tedious. Each of them have two little tangs, both of which broke off, and I have attempted to fix them by soldering the tabs back on. And I'm not sure if there was an actual correct way to put them on or take them off, but I definitely didn't do that, and I fully expect them to break again if this ever has to come apart. But I believe you will agree that that is a problem for later. It is an impossible task. Lovely. That side actually feels like it's in. Don't know how I managed that. Oh, it fell off. That doesn't stand to help. And now I can't take the other side off. Hello, wipers. How are you? Well, if my calculations I didn't make have been... Hello, wipers again. If my calculations have been correct, that should work all the way now. I think I'm going to say that works and stop pressing my luck. So I'm pretty pleased with that, at least to the end that there's no longer a big hole in the top of the car. It even works, so that's an added bonus. It could have gone a lot worse. There's still the plastic piece that covers the motor on the headliner. That'll have to get covered later. And of course I already showed you the headliner itself, so obviously that is done, as is the rest of the interior. But that will be next time. Well, now, but in the next video. Just be patient, we'll get to it. So to wrap this video up, I do hope you found it informative, entertaining, something. Find some buttons down there to click. Tell me some stuff in the comments. Big thank you to all of my patrons on Patreon. If you would like to see some of the outtakes, some sporadic behind the beans content, and all of the swear words I take out of the videos, go there and give me some money. I would appreciate it. Anyways, this has been Baked Beans Garage. I am a soon-to-be very sunburnt chinchilla, and I will see you next time.